Hey folks, Joseph Rampola here at AWE TV, and I have a very special guest here, Brian Wassom, who is the world guru for Augmented Legality. And Brian also is the secretary at augmentedreality.org, a big part of the conference. Brian, tell us your experiences. How's it been?
You know, this is an impressive conference because it just keeps getting better every year. I was wondering how they could have topped the momentum and the energy of last year, but this one just exceeded it by leaps and bounds.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about this breakfast idea that basically started. You came up with it, and it went into fruition, and it was like pretty wild. So describe this whole concept.
Well, it was inspired by similar roundtable discussions that I've encountered at other business and legal conferences. So this was an hour portion of the schedule before the main keynotes each morning from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And we called it Augmented Breakfast, or Birds of a Feather gatherings, where people who are interested in leading discussions on particular topics, they take a table topper, write the topic on there, they sit down, they stake out their table. People that are interested in discussing that topic, they get this hour-long opportunity to speak to an expert one-on-one or in a small group in a situation in that they wouldn't have otherwise in these panel discussions, or catching somebody in the hallway is really the only chance you get to go deeper with them on these topics. So this provided a comfortable atmosphere to sit down and do that. But what we also learned, and what we really didn't plan for, but we were pleasantly surprised by, was all the serendipitous conversations. There were plenty that were dedicated to a particular topic, but then there were plenty that just organized around whatever, just people sitting at a table and learning about what they're doing, and a lot of good came out of that too.
This is the first conference that I've been at where I've actually seen this implemented, and I thought it was amazing. I mean, the room was packed, and people were sharing information, and they got to cherry pick the topic that they liked. So I think it went extremely well, and I'm sure we'll see this next year also. Let's talk a little bit about our panel discussion that we had today. We talked about the future of an augmented world. We talked about privacy. We talked about issues with the pervasiveness of an augmented world and where that's moving. So, what was your take on the whole panel?
As usual, I was disappointed that we had to stop at an hour because we had so much to talk about. I think the other panelists were well chosen, and they all had a unique perspective. Robert Hernandez covering it from the position of a professor and a web journalist, covering the growth of this technology over the course of years. Cecilia Abadi, of course, very well known for her outspoken support of wearable technology and her actual development of apps for that technology and helping to make that ecosystem happen. And then Pete Wassell, who's been working on wearables and vision for AR and wearable digital eyewear for a long time. So we each brought a different perspective, and what I really enjoyed was the fact that we had some disagreement on the panel. I had my perspective, and people coming from a more artistic creator perspective had theirs, and sometimes we saw the same issue in different ways, and the audience chimed in with their particular views too. So we had not only great interaction, but we had diversity of views and opinion, and that made for a good conversation.
Absolutely. We were talking about privacy, and we were talking about how, as augmented reality and augmented world moves into the future, that when we start talking about data and what information people are putting out there, really giving up their privacy, it was kind of interesting because Cecilia Abadi shared very personally that she had come from a country that was a dictatorship. So after coming to the United States, which was completely different, and all of these freedoms that I think sometimes some people take for granted, she was able to say that she looks at these situations as not really really moving to a more transparent sort of situation where she lives more of a transparent life, and that kind of gives her a freedom. So it was kind of interesting to get those different perspectives. At the same time, I seem to think that a lot of people are just voluntarily giving up and almost kind of making themselves transparent. And being from me as a law enforcement side of it, that there are certain concerns regarding that because there are uses that might not be the most positive. So it was kind of interesting to get that whole different flavor on the panel. And last year I lost my voice and I couldn't moderate my panel, and this year, thank goodness, I was able to do it. But it was just a lot of fun to kind of do that. But one of the interesting things, Brian, and this is no shock, that you got so many questions because I think people were seeking some free legal advice from you, and they capitalized on the moment to get you on there. So what did you think about being bombarded with a lot of different legal questions?
Well, I think you're right that people are very interested in the topic of privacy, and we got some other legal questions beyond that, as we discussed partially on the panel and a lot after the panel. These copyright questions of what happens when I augment something that belongs to somebody else, or two different people augment the same physical things in different ways. I mean, those are things that you know that you and I have talked about on your podcast, that I've blogged about, and it's exciting because we're seeing real people in the industry itself encounter and wrestle with these issues because they're out there actually now making it happen. So these things that we've predicted for so many years, that we've been preparing for, now we're actually encountering it, and now we get to see how that all plays out.
Yeah. I thought the other interesting thing, and as I'm sure you found out afterwards, but there was representatives from IEEE that were there listening and paying attention. As you know, they set so many different standards when it comes down to technology. So I thought that was really interesting that they were there and they were listening, and it sounds like they're really getting involved in the AR space. They're supporting some of the art AR that's going downstairs with BC Bierman. But it's just kind of nice to see that they're out there and they're really a part of this augmented reality community.
Oh, absolutely. People are taking this seriously, and serious people are getting involved, and it's great to see.
Absolutely. All right, last question. What is the biggest takeaway for you from this conference?
That the momentum in the industry is growing, that augmented reality, wearables, the broader augmented world, as we've been calling it, is not a fad. It is a new part of society, and it will continue to be more and more in the mainstream of public conversation as the years go forward.
Brian, always a pleasure, and until I see you next time, take care, be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.